Colombo, I'm joined by Jeevan Tyagarajan, Secretary General of the Council for Liberal Democracy. From Chennai by Dr. Gladstone Xavier, Social Researcher and Dean of Arts at Loyola College. T.K. Selangovan, Member of Parliament of the Lok Sabha. My first question is to Subramaniam Swamy, President of the Janata Party. Mr. Subramaniam Swamy, do you think the DMK is serious, that this whole thing is actually a crisis, or is it a make-believe crisis with 3 ministers rushing to Chennai? Is it a make-believe crisis or a real crisis in your view?
Oh, it's clearly a make-believe crisis. We saw the same kind of posturing in 2009 during the election time, and then they did not do anything. And that's the time when all the human rights excesses took place and Prabhakaran was killed. That time they could have walked out. They did not walk out. They have not walked out in between. And today the demands they are making are so impractical that no Indian government can possibly move a resolution on genocide, because no country will support it. Perhaps with the exception of Bhutan, nobody else will support it. We'll look ridiculous in the world. So I think they will back down on some time and say communal forces should not gather strength. So we are not pressing our demands anymore.
Mr. Elangovan, is this just drama? Subramaniam Swamy says this is just drama.
Mr. Subramaniam Swamy is not our DMK's president. So it is his opinion. I cannot say anything on that.
Subramaniam Swamy, why do you think the DMK's demands are unreal? Could you pick up any one of them, for example? We could discuss it in detail.
Well, take genocide. Which country is going to support you on genocide? Even the US draft, for example, on the US draft, originally the DMK stand was support the US resolution. Then they read the UN resolution, US resolution, and found that the US says all investigations must be done by the Sri Lankan government. And then they knew that they got into a fix. Now they have done a somersault and they say, no, move amendments. What amendments? Genocide. Who's going to support you? We'll look even more ridiculous than last year.
Why do you think so? Why do you think so, Mr. Subramaniam Swamy?
Which country is going to support it? United States is not supporting it. UK is not supporting it. EU is not supporting it. China, Russia, of course. Tell me one country which will support us if we move an amendment that the resolution must include genocide.
Mr. Elangovan, are you not concerned about why India should look like an American stooge, and ruin its relationship with Sri Lanka forever by talking about genocide?
See, I'll tell you what is happening in the island is genocide. See, I'm not going into the diplomatic word terms and other things. I as a Tamilian, we as Tamilians know that what is happening in the island is genocide. To this effect, there were reports by various international NGOs and governments like the Amnesty International, like the Human Rights Watch, and various other, not Tamilians, not Tamil political parties, by international agencies which have stated that what is happening in the island is war crime and genocide. So on that basis, we want that to be stopped. That is our demand. And on humanitarian grounds, we are not bothered about diplomatic relations, diplomatic ties.
No, but
what is happening in the island should be stopped.
Mr. Elangovan, many people, basically Subramaniam Swamy is questioning you. He's saying this is all theatrics, this is drama. And he's not wrong, Mr. Elangovan, because the DMK threatened to withdraw from the centre during the Sri Lanka LTT war. But you didn't act on the threat then. You said you'll withdraw support to the central government.
That is why I'll tell you. At that time, the Minister, Mr. Chidambaram, the then External Affairs Minister, they all gave assurances and we believed it. But this time we don't want to believe such assurances. We want action.
No, what action? You said you'd withdraw support. Didn't you say you'd withdraw support? Did you not say in 2009, BBC Sinhala reported in July 2009 that Karunanidhi said to the State Assembly that a separate country for Sri Lanka's Tamils was unrealistic? He rejected calls for an investigation in 2009. He said it's counterproductive to reconciliation. Am I right or am I wrong, Mr. Elangovan?
No. When the Sri Lankan government, when the President of Sri Lanka gave assurances to the government of India like demilitarization, democratization and devolution of powers at that time, when he stated that such things will happen and he gave assurances, we thought that something progressive will happen in that island.
And you realized 4 years later
Now
that you were fooled by the Sri Lankan government.
Yes, nothing has happened. Yes, for the past 1 year we have been harping on it and we have been discussing this. We have been instructing, asking the central government.
Subramaniam Swamy.
When we thought that
Yes, may I say that the DMK and its friends in Sri Lanka who run the TNA, they supported the candidacy of the Commander-in-Chief of the Sri Lankan Army, who was there during the period they say genocide took place, Mr. Fonseca. General Fonseca was the candidate of the Tamils during the presidential election. How does DMK defend that? How can you talk about genocide by Rajapaksa but not by Fonseca, who is the Commander-in-Chief of the army at the battlefield?
See, DMK supporting Fonseca is the idea of Mr. Subramaniam Swamy. Why should we support Fonseca?
You did. You supported your TNA, supported it and you welcomed it.
No. DNA is not ours. I'll let you know, TNA is not ours. TNA is a political party in Sri Lanka. We are for the Sri Lankan Tamils in the northern side.
They come and
northern
meet
part
you.
of Sri Lanka. We are not for any political party.
They are also Tamils.
I'll tell you, we were not. Yes, we support the people, not political parties. Political parties may take stands depending on their position in the island. Why should we support a political party?
My question
to the island to canvass votes for Fonseca?
My question is this. You see, I genuinely find Mr. Elangovan, with all respect, a slight shift in the position between what the DMK said in 2009 and now. But that's not the issue. The issue tonight is what do we stand to gain and what do we stand to lose? The UPA stands to gain to survive. But what does the country stand to lose?
Yes.
Dr. Gladstone Xavier, my question is to you. Don't you feel, you have a UN draft resolution which says give us unfettered, give the special rapporteurs on the independence of judges and lawyers unfettered access in Sri Lanka. My question to you, Dr. Gladstone Xavier, is this: unfettered access sets a very dangerous precedent. It impinges on a nation's sovereignty. Tomorrow, people could say give us unfettered access in Jammu and Kashmir. Give us unfettered access in the Northeast. Give us unfettered access to parts of India which are struck by Maoism. It's not going to be limited to this, Dr. Xavier.
Well, I can't hear the question very clearly. Can you please repeat? I'm not able to hear the question very clearly. Can you kindly repeat the question, please?
In brief, Dr. Xavier, giving unfettered access is dangerous. Giving the United Nations rapporteurs unfettered access in Sri Lanka sets a dangerous precedent for India. It can be applied on us tomorrow.
Yeah, see, the thing with the unfettered access is, I don't think the United Nations itself will accept an unfettered access into any other country, because Sri Lanka is a sovereign nation, and unless and until the Sri Lankan government agrees to allow its investigators to come in, how will any investigation progress? So at the moment, if you say unfettered access, no government is going to agree. Even Indian government is not going to agree to something like that. So that's our take on it. Now over here, what we have to discuss something which is more practical, which is more long-standing and more healing the whole process, rather than just taking us back to what happened 2009 and before that. So how do we move forward in this process rather than taking it backwards?
No, but if you want, for example, let me put it, Dr. Xavier, if you want a special mention, do you support a special mention of the crimes committed by the Lankan army on the Tamils? You support that?
Yeah, definitely.
Would you
definitely, because see, you cannot You cannot deny the fact that there were crimes committed. Yes, there were crimes committed. Either you call it crimes against humanity, you call it war crimes, or whatever you call it. The nomenclature is not not the point over here. I mean, the UN has debated on calling genocide or calling a thing as genocide or not for 30 years in some countries. That's not the point. The whole point over here is how do you move forward? Yes, some things, heinous things have happened in Sri Lanka, and nobody is denying that. Yes, now how do you move forward? That's the whole point now.
No, but my second part of my question was, tell me then, Dr. Xavier, here on Newshour Tonight, that with equal force, you will also be amenable to a direct and unambiguous condemnation of the violence carried out by the LTTE on innocent civilians as part of that resolution.
Yeah, of course. Of course, see. Of course, see, I mean, as being neutral in this point is very important. How can you deny that there were atrocities committed on the Tamils by the LTT also? Nobody denies that. Now, people also over there. Now what happens, LTT has been destroyed. At least as
No,
an
but that's
army,
not what that's not what the DMK is saying.
And they're not available in the country.
That's not what the DMK is saying. Is Mr. Elangovan going to be open to that?
I'm sure.
Is Mr. Elangovan going to be open for that? You want a resolution passed in the
There is no
Assembly?
LTT there right now. Now, if you don't have the LTT, how do you hold them accountable over there? They're not there anymore. Now, only the Sri Lankan government is there, and now it's time to hold them accountable. That's right.
Surely, but I don't understand why atrocities that have been committed 4 or 5 years back are any less important than atrocities committed 6 or 7 years back. And I don't think Mr. Elangovan will agree to that. Mr. Elangovan, will you agree to that? Will you say tomorrow?
If you want to go into investigating everything, you should start from the year 1948. What had happened to the Tamils in that island? So we can't go to that. We are talking about today, when LTT is no more. When the government of Sri Lanka had promised so many things for the Tamils. What has happened now? What is happening now is the question.
You are avoiding my question on the LTT. Jeevan Tyagarajan, listening to this debate from Colombo, what do you think India stands to lose if we go hammer and tongs against Sri Lanka and we go with the Americans?
Good evening to you, Arnab. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Jeevan.
Thank you very much. I think in terms of Indian foreign policy, I think we have a lot of respect for it. It's much bigger than anything that can emanate from Europe. And I think what is fundamental is to see India's own priorities in terms of its bilateral relationship with Sri Lanka, and I think its own concerns in terms of responses that it requires. And I'm looking at it more from a bilateral perspective rather than to place India's foreign policy in a multilateral setting. That would be my first point.
So why don't you tell the DMK representative whose party is threatening to withdraw support from the UPA what India stands to lose? Because he's looking at it from his own prism. What do you think India stands to lose vis-a-vis Sri Lanka? Do you think this relationship will be over?
I don't think the relationship will be over. I think we are going to be close to each other for a long, long time unless one of us drifts off towards the Arctic, which is not going to happen. But I think what would be a little bit more of concern, I believe, for South Bloc would be, I think, as you rightly said previously, some of the precedent-setting aspects of the current resolution, which I think on the long term, India would find very difficult to live with.
Give me one example.
For example, I think the resolution is calling for an external mechanism to monitor a domestic process.
Yes.
That's difficult enough, I presume.
Why do you think it is?
The UN Charter, I think, looks at regional solutions to regional issues. This, I think, is looking at a multilateral legitimacy for unilateral intervention. And I think one really requires stepping back and looking at all the nuances before you actually embrace it wholesomely.
You think it could boomerang on India in the Indian context, domestic context?
It could in time to come.
Well, is that not important to you, Mr. Elangovan? Or do you not care about it? That your own nation's interests will be compromised in the long term?
I'll tell you that is important. I don't deny that. But we were demanding the government of India to talk to what Rajiv Gandhi did. Whether is it not an interference with the Sri Lankan affairs? But he wanted a peaceful settlement. India should have taken such steps without going to NHRC or seeking support of other nations. They should have done as a neighboring country. They should have discussed this. They did. And they got some assurances from the Sri Lankan president. But when Sri Lankan president had failed to fulfill his assurances, to carry out the assurances, it is bounden duty of the...
why have we woken up now, Mr. Elangovan?
As to why?
Mr. Elangovan, why have we woken up now? I am only asking you today, you want to bring the government down? Why have you woken up now?
No. We have been demanding for the past 1 year. We started our TESO conference in August 2012.
No.
Last year. Since then we were demanding this.
Why last year? Why last year? India has said in the past, today this resolution, this US draft resolution says, Subramaniam Swamy, coming back to you, this resolution says, noting with concern the failure of the government of Sri Lanka to fulfill its public commitments, including devolution of political authority, etc. Isn't this a direct contradiction of India's statement which says that the resettlement and rehabilitation process has witnessed considerable progress? Do we keep changing our position every night, overnight, depending on which ally we want to make happy? Dr. Swamy?
You're asking whom?
Yes, I'm asking you, Dr. Swamy.
Well, you haven't read the whole resolution. The resolution goes on to, the US resolution goes on to say that all this must be investigated by Sri Lanka. That is what has upset the DMK and all the pro-LTT elements around the world. They don't want Sri Lanka to investigate these allegations of the Americans. And the Americans make the allegations, it's not God's truth. The Americans tomorrow say about Kashmir, will we accept what they say? We cannot accept, and of course the Americans, when it suits their national interests, they'll do damn all. They won't care a fig for UNHRC or anything else.
Precisely. Will the Americans allow this form of intervention? It's a very, very important question here. Dr. Gladstone Xavier, eventually we have a policy of non-interference. And a large part of our viewership would also want to know that why are we allowing a direct infringement of Sri Lanka's sovereignty? That's the question which Jeevan Tyagarajan has raised from Colombo. I'd like your response to it, because we have a stated policy of non-interference. Going with the DMK is going to contradict that.
See, the non-interference does not mean keeping quiet to what is happening in your neighborhood, to the same community, to the same brothers and sisters, to the same ethnicity who you share. Or human rights is beyond this whole question of non-interference. Now, what we are trying to do, that's why India at this stage needs to take a very mature decision by saying that, by condemning what has happened. That is true. They should have condemned it earlier. They should have continued to condemn it earlier. But right now, what is more important is look at the process forward. Yes, condemn it, but then again, support the rebuilding of the Tamil areas. Move forward with progress and reconciliation. Move forward with development. I mean, even that. So that means we cannot even support them in their development. Is that interference? Yeah, even supporting them could be interference. I'm not meaning supporting the government, but supporting the people. They're just basically clawing back into rebuilding their lives. So that's what is more necessary right now. Now, while condemning those serious and heinous crimes that were committed, yes, and holding people accountable, on the other hand, it is important to progress further and make sure that, yes, these people are helped to come back and establish their life as normal. That would be my response to that.
Subramaniam Swamy, last question. Do you think the DMK is backing out all hunky-dory tomorrow afternoon?
Oh yes, they will not leave, because they've got a 2G problem, and most of their people who are under investigation or under indictment, they will probably get convicted. They can't afford to leave the Congress party.
Mr. Elangovan, you want to respond to that? Subramaniam Swamy is linking your 2G dilemma.
I don't know why we have come to this stage. We have made statements. Our leader had made statements, and he is talking about 2G and other things. 2G is the different thing. 2G is taking a different turn also. Forget about 2G. Now we want the government of India to condemn or censure Sri Lanka for its atrocities against the Tamils. That is our stand today. We are not bothered about other issues. We are now concerned only with the Sri Lankan issue.
Let's see where the story goes and whether the DMK actually pulls back support. As of now, looks extremely unlikely. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me. Thank you.